for allowing me to come before you this morning and just share a few words with you on the subject of a man's business. You know, a few words about Bishop Clark and what I think about Bishop Clark. You know, I've had the experience of being in the presence of a lot of leaders, world leaders. I've been in the presence of high-ranking political leaders, corporate leaders, government leaders. I don't think I've ever been in the presence of a leader quite like Bishop Clark. And I say that honestly and truthfully. The more I'm in his presence, the more I crave to be in his presence. I've learned so much about him and so much from him in the short period of time that I've known him. He's just, I really don't have the words to describe him. He is an awesome, awesome, awesome leader. And I think that Truth Revealed, this community, is very fortunate to have him as a leader. So can we just recognize him for the leader that he is? And next, I want to thank the Truth Revealed family for the way that they have welcomed my wife and I. This is an awesome church. You know, it really is. I can't say enough good things about it. I don't know that you realize really how awesome you are. Everything at this church that I've been affiliated with is done with excellence, including this conference. When I walked in, this is the first men's conference that I've attended. I walked in last night and I looked over things and I thought, man, this is just amazing to me. And then as we got into the services and I started listening to the speakers, it was just, well, I was blown away. Awesome church. So I just want to thank Truth Revealed for allowing me to be a part of this. And lastly, I want to thank each of you today for coming to listen to me and allowing me to just take a few minutes of your precious time to share a few words with you, and that, you know, you being willing to listen to what I have to say about a man's business. Now, Bishop told me last week that I am a momentum shifter. And he told all of us that again last night, that we are a momentum shifter. Well, I thought about that last night when he said it and what it really means. We are momentum shifters. And at this very moment, momentum is shifting. Momentum is shifting, and we are part of the reason why that is happening. We must not lose this moment, must take full advantage of it. He also told me that I'm a sixth man, that he has selected me to be a sixth man. Now, when he first said that, you know, and I thought about it, I said, man, that goes against all the training that I did back in the day, you know, because back in the day, I trained to be a starter, you know. I always wanted to be a starter, and I worked hard to be a starter. But Bishop has shown me in just a very short period of time the value of being a sixth man. Because as a sixth man, you got to be ready at all times. You know, as a starter, you get to think about it a little bit, you know, from game to game. You know, you get to think about your approach to the game. You know, this is what I did this last game. This is what I can do a little better. This is what I can change before the next game. But as a sixth man, you don't have that. You got to be ready at a moment's notice, and you got to be ready to have a positive impact. You got to be ready to go. You just got to be ready to go. So I got to shift. I'm a momentum shifter, so I got to shift my perspective. Now I got to think about, man, from every moment of every day, whenever I get the opportunity to go, I got to be ready to go. And I am going to be ready to go, because I'm a momentum shifter and I'm a sixth man. I relish that opportunity. So thank you, Bishop, for enlightening me on what it means to be a sixth man. Now I'm here to speak to you on the subject of a man's business. Now for me, that's a very interesting and compelling subject. It has caused me to do a lot of self-reflection, and it's caused me to ask myself a lot of questions. What does it mean when you talk about a man's business? And so it's only natural for me to start my talk with a question. I'm going to pose a question to you for you to think about. You don't have to answer it to me, but I want you to think about it. So when you hear the word business, what comes to mind? Do you think about money? Do you think about work? How about pressure? Do you think about having to prove yourself? Maybe responsibility comes to mind. Maybe stress. Maybe success. Maybe failure. Or the fear of failure. You see, most men are taught early on that business means what you do for a living. But today I want to talk about something deeper than your job, your income, or your title. Today I want to talk about a man's real business. I want to talk to you about God's relationship to a man's business and how he impacts that. Allow me to explain a foundational tenet of God's involvement in a man's business, what I believe to be a foundational tenet. You see, long before God calls you to a career or calls you to a business, he calls you to character. He starts to work on your character, to develop your character, because that's an important part of how you approach business, your business or someone else's business. It has a lot to do with whether or not you're going to be successful. He starts to work or be concerned about your character, because your character has a lot to do with who you're going to become. You see, a man's business and how God looks at it is not just about how you make a living, but it's about how you live. Think about that for a minute. Not just about how you make a living, but it's about how you live. Because if you live right, if you live the way God desires you to live, you'll make a living, and you'll make a decent living, because you'll do it God's way. Keep in mind that nothing I say to you today, no tenements for success, nothing I say to you today of value is going to matter if you don't do it God's way. And God's way means, first and foremost, you got to put him first. The sooner we learn that lesson and the sooner we embrace that lesson, the better off we're going to be. Let's not waste time learning that lesson. One of my favorite books is one written by Tony Dungy. Now, you all know who Tony Dungy is. He's a successful former NFL player, former coach of the Tampa Bay Bucks, former successful Super Bowl coach for the Indianapolis Colts. The book that I'm referring to is called Uncommon Life. And in that book, he talks about several important character building traits that, and lessons that he learned during his life, and the people who impacted him. A common theme throughout the book was that in all of the successes that he enjoyed, there was hard work that came before the successes. There were downtimes, there were trials and tribulations. But through it all, there was God. he had faith in God. He always put God first. His faith never wavered. And in that, I would say he learned the value or the key to success in a man's business. And that's the one I'm going to share with you today. You know, the world is very good at telling a young man or any man what to chase. But it's not very good at telling us what actually matters. You know, we're told to hustle. We're told to grind it. We're told to try and impress others. Never slow down. But God says real success starts somewhere else. So today I want to walk through two things that we need to understand as men. We need to understand what business success looks like God's way. And then we need to understand what threatens that success and how we can overcome those things that threaten it. Because if we don't decide what kind of man we're going to be ourselves, the world will decide it for us. I had a mentor of mine tell me one time, early on in business, he said, I offer to you that in the absence of a plan, one will be imposed upon you. And he was absolutely right. In the absence of a plan, one will be imposed upon you. I'm going to share a little personal story with you, and I'm going to do that a couple times throughout my talk with you. You see, the man standing before you today is not the man that would have been standing before you just a few years ago. I've been truly blessed to have enjoyed what someone labeled as a pretty successful career in aviation. It didn't start that way, though. See, I know what it's like to start at the very bottom, and I know what it feels like to be rejected, to not get promoted for jobs that you qualified for, time after time, solely because of who you are or what you look like. The pinnacle of success in my career to this point was to serve as the COO of an airline, the chief operating officer. I was the top officer in the airline. I was responsible for most of the decisions that were made. The entire company reported to me. However, for those of you who've ever flown on an airplane operated by an airline, I'm sure you are familiar with the lavatories or the bathrooms on board those aircraft. Well, I started out as the person who serviced those lavatories, or in other terms, I operated the truck that pulled up to the aircraft that dumped those lavatories. And on many a windy day, do I need to say more? On many a windy day, I went home with the lab juice on my clothing, and my wife telling me that don't come in the house, just go straight to the laundry room and take those clothes off and leave them in there, and then you do the laundry yourself. I also cleaned the aircraft cabins, and on many occasions that meant cleaning up behind people who got sick on board the aircraft. That was my job. But I heard somebody say last night that you do whatever your job is, you do it in excellence. And I did those jobs to the very best of my ability, because I did them in reference to God. He gave me those jobs. And he was preparing me for something better.
That's right.
And they did lead to something better. So that's how I started. Held numerous jobs long before I got into management. I was an aircraft mechanic at one point. And then I tried to move into other positions, only to get continuously denied for the same reasons I've mentioned to you before. But there was a lesson that I learned along the way that came out of all of those denials. I learned that, in business, whether it's in your own business or in the business of working for somebody else, the road to success can sometimes be a little bumpy. I also learned that delay is not necessarily denial. But the major lesson that I learned is that if you put God first, there is a purposeful end that you have a reasonable expectation of success with God. Because with God, you can expect great things. And he has proven that to me time and time again. So, trust him. My grandmother used to say, trust him and give him time. It works. Just trust him and give him time. So, let's talk about how to succeed in business doing it God's way. Our culture defines success in numerous ways, but most of them are materialistic. However, there's scripture found in Proverbs 22:1 that cuts straight through the noise of culture, and it gives us some words about success. And it says, a good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. In other words, who you are will always matter more than what you have. That's a great business principle, whether you're working for someone else or working for yourself. Who you are matters more than what you have, because who you are will go a long ways in determining what you have. Success God's way is not about image. It is about integrity. It's not about shortcuts. It's about strength. And it's not about pride. It's about purpose. There are some traits that I want to talk to you about that are necessary and that define success, what a successful man looks like in God's eyes. I'm going to talk about 3 of them. I like to do things in threes, so I'm going to give you 3 of those. First one I want to talk to you about is discipline. For me, discipline is extremely important. I've found that without discipline, it's almost impossible to get things done. Last night, Bishop talked about procrastination and how it's something that he just, what I took from it was he just despises procrastination. He just can't tolerate it. I can understand that. He has disciplined himself in such a way that procrastination has no place in his life. And discipline is a necessary tenet for success, personal success, business success. You got to be disciplined about it. When we think about discipline, I think for most of us, we think about athletics. We look at an athlete and think about, man, they got to be really disciplined to achieve the results that they achieve on the field, right? On the court. We think about Michael Jordan, we think about Kobe, we look at those guys and we say, man, they get great results. They've had a great career. They're extremely successful. But we know that they had to put in a lot of work to get there. We know that there were hours of work that happened behind the scenes. We didn't see that work, but we know it had to happen. They had to be disciplined in their approach to that work. Last year, my daughter, 33 years old, she lives in Atlanta. She decided she was going to run the New York City Marathon. That's a distance of 26.2 miles. I don't know why she decided to do that, but she did. 26.2 miles. She lives in Atlanta. It's in New York City in November. It was cold. She'd made that decision 8 months prior to the race. So she had to train and prepare her body and her mind. She had to discipline herself. So she started training in the spring of the year in Atlanta. That training went from the spring to the summer to the fall and into the winter. She changed her diet, she changed her habits, she changed her routine. She had to get up early in the morning and run. She had to deny herself. She had to run alone, she had to run in the rain, she had to run in the cold, she had to run in the heat. She had to be disciplined. And then in November, she had to travel to New York. So she had to plan for all of that, the expense of going to New York. She had to budget for that. Again, discipline. She got to New York. My wife, my son, and I went with her and some friends of hers to support her. Day of the race, she's all proud. She's running in the race. We're at different points along the route. We see her at mile 6. She's all fired up. She's running strong. At mile 10, she injures her knee. She sends us a message at mile 13. I'm in extreme pain. I don't know if I can finish it, but I'm going to keep trying. We don't see her again until mile 25. We're in Central City Park in New York, and she comes limping over to us at mile 25. She's almost in tears. She comes up to me, she looks at me, she gives me a slight little hug, and then she turns away. She gives her mother a slight little hug, and she turns away. She goes over to her brother. He's 12 years her senior, but they're very close. And she gives him a very strong embrace. And as she starts to pull away, he stops her and he grabs her and he just holds her real tight. He whispers something into her ear. I don't know what he said. To this day, they won't tell me what they said. But she turns around and she comes back and she embraces him again. Then she smiles. And then she turns around and she limps on and she starts running again. And she runs stronger. And she finishes that race. So she ran the last 16.2 miles, injured and in pain. Discipline. Discipline. You don't drift into strength. You train for it. You don't drift into strength. You train for it. The other night I heard Bishop talk about his approach to studying, his disciplined approach to studying. When I listen to Bishop's messages, I'm just blown away. I mean, every time I've told him this, every time I listen to his messages, I don't have the words to describe them. I'm just blown away. And I walk away from it craving for more. Can't wait until the next one. And I'm so disappointed when I have to go out of town and miss a couple Sundays. I have responsibilities that take me out of town a lot. I live in Georgia, I live here, and I have to go back and forth in different places. So I miss about every other Sunday. And I'm so disappointed when I do, because I just crave his messages. And I'm thinking, where does all that come from? But then I hear him talk about his approach, his disciplined approach, and that approach that he has used time and time and time and time again. See, that's his business. That's part of his business. And that's why he's successful, because he's disciplined. And that's why his messages are so awesome. He uses that disciplined approach for his self-enrichment, but not only for himself, but it's for us. It's that he can be better for us, and that he has a closer relationship with God, a relationship that improves day after day. But it's disciplined. It's a disciplined approach. Remember, you don't drift into the strength of discipline. You train for it. The next trait I want to talk about is humility. This is an important one for men. Why is it so important? Because a lot of us as men shy away from being humble. We shy away because we see being humble as a weakness. You know, we've been taught that we are supposed to be masculine, always show strength, never be humble. But I see humility differently. I see humility as strength under control. Strength under control. Bishop talked about humility last Wednesday night when he spoke about it with growth markers. Having humility is important for growth. Remember, humility as strength under control. James gives us this promise in James 4:10. He said, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up. If you're in business and you want business success, apply that principle. Humble yourself before the Lord, and he will lift you up. That's a promise from God. When it pertains to a man's business, it's important to understand that. When it pertains to a man's business, it's important to turn to the Bible and see what God says about certain applications for your business. You'll find word there that addresses almost any circumstance you face. And you need to apply those. Apply the word to your business practices. Those are guidelines. That's a guideline for success. Remember I said early on, if you don't put God first, nothing I say to you today will matter, because it won't yield positive results. In times we've seen men like Bishop reach the highest levels of public success and still consistently point attention away from themselves and point it towards God. They use the opportunities not to boast, but to serve. When Bishop bought the young man the shoes and then put them on his feet, that was humility, a demonstration of humility. He didn't do that to show, hey, I bought this young man shoes and I'm putting them on his feet. It was an opportunity to reach that young man at a time, in a way that he could be reached. And it yielded positive results. That's a demonstration of a man who knows his business and knows it well. Now, I've talked to you up to this point about success. What success in a man's business look like when you do it God's way. I want to talk to you a little bit about stumbling blocks and how you can, what some of them are and how you can avoid them. And I got to be quick. Every man will face challenges in their business. The enemy, he doesn't, a lot of times he doesn't come at you straight forward. You know, he'll disguise the challenges that he throws at you, but he's going to throw challenges at you. More often he'll distract you, he'll put pressures on you. And these are designed to just slowly pull you off course. So let's just talk about, briefly, some of his tactics and then how you can avoid them. For one of the common tactics that I think that all men face, that we have a challenge with, is pride. You know, we've all heard that pride comes before a fall, right? That's true. I once worked with a young man who was a talented, very talented manager, but he's very proud too. He always felt like, you know, I got this. I'm in control. This is my thing. And he didn't want anyone telling him what to do or how to do it. And the more he demonstrated that character trait, the worse situations got for him. Until he got to a situation where things just started falling apart for him. And people wouldn't come to his rescue because when they had tried in the past, he wouldn't allow them to. So he started to fail. And he kept failing until one day he realized he needed to change. So he humbled himself. He asked for help, and he asked for forgiveness for his previous behaviors. And the day he did that, people started coming to his rescue. Things changed for him. What was once a failure became success. Things changed. His projects turned around. He became successful. There was a time when I struggled with pride. Incident with my wife. My wife is a very brilliant lady. She is just, that's one of the things that attracted me to her. Aside from her beauty, she was her mind. She just, the more time I spent with her when we were dating, the more impressed I became with her mind, and I wanted to just spend more time with her. Just her mind just amazed me. Every conversation, I wanted more conversation with her. She challenged me intellectually. Well, about 3 years into our marriage, she came to me and she said, Larry, I think it's time for us to start investing in rental property. My immediate response was, no, we can't do that. I said, we're struggling just to meet our monthly obligations. I'm trying to pay the bills. How are we going to, she wanted to buy a house and rent it out. I'm struggling to pay the mortgage on the house we're living in. Had just bought it, just moved out of an apartment. And so I said, no. She said, but here's a plan that I've thought about on how we can afford to do it. And the benefit of it is that, we got a young son, but if we do this now, this can be something we can use for him later when he goes to college. It was a good plan. And I looked at it and I saw that it could work. But I still said no. And we didn't do it. And you know the reason we didn't do it? The reason I said no? Because it was her plan, not mine. That was the sole reason I said no. Because the plan was workable. It would have caused us to, as Sabrina said a little earlier, make some changes. A little sacrifice here and there. Had it been my plan, I would have done it. Because it was a good plan and it made sense. But I said no. Pride got in the way. It was a stumbling block to success. About 2 years later, my wife came back to me again. She said, Larry, I think we ought to, now's a good time for us to get into the rental business. And I said yes. She presented the same plan that she had presented before, very similar, without many changes. We were in a little bit better position. The opportunity was a little bit different, but I was a little bit wiser, a little more mature. And I realized that my pride had caused us to be behind by 2 years. We could have been much further down the road. So you know what? We have rental properties today that my wife manages. I don't get in the way. I let her run with that. When she just comes to me, when she feels the need to come to me, or when I ask her a question, she answers the question. Because that's something she enjoys, that's something she's very good at, and that's something she has done very well for us as a family. And her work with that has put us in a much improved financial position than we would have been in otherwise. And I realize that she's better at this than I am. And so, pride out of the way, let her run with it. It benefits both of us and our entire family. Pride's a stumbling block, men. If you've got a partner that's good at something, let her be your partner. Treat her as such. Another stumbling block is laziness. Laziness can be disguised as different things, but at its core is laziness, I call it, sometimes for me, I call it rest. I say, I'm tired, I need to get a little rest. I'm overworked, I need a little rest. But it's just me being lazy. That's all it is. So what I try to do is I try to set goals. I try to set little short-term goals, intermediate goals, long-term goals. I set objectives. I try to do things that keep me on track. When I get lazy, I say, but I said I was going to do these 3 things today. Let me go to my checklist and see if I've done them. If I've done them, and that's all I said I really needed to get done today, then I can take a little break. But if I still got some things on that list to do, then I can't take that break. Because laziness is the enemy of good, sound business practices, good, sound business effort. Got to keep pounding. Sam Mills, you guys know who Sam Mills is? Sam Mills was a professional football player, undersized, graduated from an HBCU, said he couldn't make it, played for the New Orleans Saints, All-Pro, and played for the San Francisco 49ers, linebacker, too small, but All-Pro. His motto was just keep pounding. Every day, just keep pounding. You'll get there. And he did. So I'm saying to you, just keep pounding. Don't be lazy. Keep pounding. You'll get there. The last short stumbling block I want to talk to you about is temptation. Don't be tempted to take shortcuts, because shortcuts will cost you. My boss, just in the last 3 weeks, was tempted in a way that he knew better than he should be tempted. And as a result, he lost his job. He lost a job that paid him almost $500,000 a year. Doing something he knew better. But sometimes we allow ourselves to get comfortable in a situation, and that temptation gets the best of us. It can happen to anybody if you don't have God as your barometer, you know. Put God first, and you won't go down that road. Once you get the first inkling, you'll have a reference. You know, Joseph with Potiphar's wife. Remember that? He said, I can't do it because of my relationship with God. It would have been easy for him to do it. He was in a faraway land. She was after him. Right? Who would have blamed him? Well, but he said, God, I can't do this. This man, my boss, was in charge of the entire program, the entire company on the program that I worked. There was nobody above him on the program. $500,000 a year. Gone because of an indiscretion. Bishop talked about those indiscretions the other night. Real life example of what a moment of indiscretion can do because of temptation. A stumbling block to business success. Real life. I'm going to close with a couple of things about priorities and just a few other things. Maybe about 5 more minutes, I think, is what I have. So let me just wrap it up with this. In business, you have to have priorities. Sometimes you have to reorder your priorities. The priorities you start with today may not be the same priorities you have tomorrow. Be aware of that. It's okay to readjust your priorities. But never ever change the number one priority, which is to keep God first. Keep God first and foremost, and let Him direct you. You will be successful if you do that. Business needs change, but keeping God first, that will never change. Remember that. As I've gotten older and longer in my career, legacy and mentorship has become more important to me. I've started to look beyond myself now and started to think about, what the end of my career should look like and how I can be more useful to others. I've come to realize that legacy, isn't about what you leave behind when you're gone. Legacy is more to me like something you build every day. I would challenge you to think about it that way as you get older. Think about, what you can do to impact somebody else's life in a positive way. And one of the greatest ways that you can do that is through mentorship. Sabrina said, it doesn't always have to be about money. It can be about your time. Many young men didn't have the benefit of growing up with fathers in the house. I did. My parents, I grew up with 2 loving parents in the house. My mother finished 6th grade. My dad finished 7th grade. But they both were hard workers. They had common sense, a lot of common sense. I never knew what it was like to be hungry. I never knew what it was like not to feel loved. I had 6 brothers and sisters. I never knew what it was like not to have parents involved in my life. I never knew what it was like not to have a dad to give me wise counsel. I never knew what it was like to have a dad who was an alcoholic or a dad who made me ashamed. I never knew what it was like to have parents that I wasn't proud of. I never knew what it was like to have parents who weren't pillars in the community. I was blessed that way. But not every young man had that. I did know what it was like to be rejected outside of the family. I did know what it was like to give love to others outside of the family and not receive love in return. I did know what it was like to be disrespected. I did know what it was like to be rejected. I did know what it was like to be told you're not good enough. I did know what it was like to be discriminated against time after time after time. But I did also know what it was like to have someone tell you, yes, you can. And that made all the difference in the world. So I challenge all of us as men to be that somebody in somebody else's life who can say, yes, you can. To them in business or in their lives, yes, you can. You can do it. You can be that positive person. So my challenge to you is this: take care of your business and understand what your business is. Your business is not just about that thing that you do every day that's existential. You know, it's not just about your job. It's not just about your money. But a man's business is about your character. Your character when no one's watching.
That's right.
It's about the business of your discipline when it could be easier to quit. It's about the business of being humility when success comes your way. And the business of mentoring others as you grow. Live in such a way that someone else becomes stronger because they watched how you lived. Because at the end of the day, success isn't what you accumulate. It's about the man you become and the legacy you leave behind. So take care of your business, and that's a man's business. Thank you all so very much.
Great job, great job. Before you go, Mr. Montford, I want to see if we have any men that have any questions for you. Do we have anyone that has any questions? We have our catch boxes that we can pass out, but are there any men that have any questions for Mr. Montford?
I did not, sir. Today
He wants to hear what you do.
today I'm the program director for maintenance and engineering at AR Corporation. It's an aviation services company that serves on a contract for the State Department. We provide aircraft for the State Department in various countries. We are, as I speak, putting aircraft on the ground in Venezuela. So we are in countries where there are hot spots all over the world, and we're in Latin American countries as well. And as program director for maintenance and engineering, I have responsibility for helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft.
As you all can see, he has a broad base. Talking about humility, he wouldn't say it.
Thank you. Hello, testing. I wanted to say, this is a catch box, right? Catch it. This technology is catch it. You can't mess it up. Right. You gotta learn how to do that. Right. So this is good technology for all of y'all. So don't be passive, right? Get into the game. The man is extraordinary in terms of his business acumen. You can learn from it. Yes. But he's humble. He wouldn't say, this is what I'm doing. And I fly back and forth from Atlanta down here and stop into the church, because the word is important, just like my business is important. Right. He's moving things even in Argentina, Venezuela. So his job is about getting resources into that country that they just extracted Maduro out of. He's involved in it. What I would like to do is partner. I have a dream of raising up aviators. And so I would like for you to help me to do that. And drones, drone work. Where's Dave Bryan? Is he here? Dave, stand up. Dave, are you an aircraft mechanic? Yes, sir. Okay. See, this is the kind of relationship we need, because a lot of these young men don't understand the power of what we could do if we came together and partnered. And I want you, if you have a question about that, please don't hesitate. He's the man to give you some pointers, to direct you in the way you need to be directed, because he's going to help me to do something, put it on the map. And I believe we're going to touch a lot of young men that can be aircraft mechanics. You'll never be absent of a job if you can work on an aircraft. Right. Right. It ain't about crack. It ain't about business in the street. It's about airplanes. Right. Right. He can help us to get there. Okay? I don't want to throw it to you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I had a question. So I know earlier you said your wife wanted to purchase a rental property, and because it wasn't your idea, you didn't like it. But most men operate in fear, and so I guess I want you to kind of share or help anybody that's probably operating in fear and starting a business or just going all in. Bishop Battles, a few years ago kind of told me to do that, and today I can probably say that I've invested in myself and done that. But for those that are in the crowd who might be struggling with that, if you can share some wisdom in that, men that are operating in fear.
I think that's a good question. Fear is not unusual, but I would say to you, you overcome fear by doing your research. You have to spend the time to do the research and try to understand what's causing you to have the fear. Is it because of something in your background? Like for me, when I bought my first home, I had a fear of buying my home. And when I really thought about it, that fear came from my father, who said to me at an early age, boy, you can't afford to buy a house. My father didn't know my financial circumstances, but he knew what it took for him to buy his first house. So he planted that fear in my mind, and it took me a while to overcome that. I had to do the research to understand, yeah, I can't afford to buy a house. My job, I'm earning enough money, I'm paying rent. My house payment will be less than the rent, when I did the research. But you got to understand what's at the root of the fear. Do the research, and that'll help you to overcome it. And then also what I've come to find out, especially at Truth Revealed, there are so many resources, people here who are very knowledgeable and more than likely have knowledge in the area of the fear that you're dealing with. Talk to them. They can probably help you out. We're blessed at this church to have all that. This is an awesome church. I'm just telling you, it's awesome. It really is. You got the resources.
Earlier you said that you was cleaning planes and stuff like that, and cabins and everything, and you moved up, and with racism and everything. Was there anybody that helped you get to where you're at now versus where you were then, that gave that edge to get to the next level?
There were two men specifically that I can point to, and they were men of a different race. One came to me when I was a mechanic, and I was working in a shop. And he came to me one afternoon and he said, one of my greatest disappointments is that I've not been able to fully utilize your potential. He said, but I'm going to try to change that. So he started giving me the opportunity to go to various training classes while I was on the clock, while I was working. And the reason he did that was because of my approach to my work. Remember I told you that even when I was dumping those laboratories or cleaning those planes, I did it to the very best of my ability. Well, every job I had that approach. So he saw that. He was the vice president of the facility, of the base. And he had noticed my work, whatever I was doing. When I was sweeping the floors, I was the first one to get a broom and the last one to put it up. And he'd be walking the hall some days and he would notice that. And so when I got to be a mechanic, he noticed I would be out on the floor doing my work from the very beginning of the shift until the very end of the shift. And he'd just be walking through sometimes and he'd see that. When there was a training opportunity, I would always sign up for it. So he started sending me to different classes. Some of the other folks, the managers at the facility, when he tried to give them training, they would decline it. They didn't want to do it. And so I started embracing that, and he just started sending me to more and more training, and I excelled at the training. He got the training results, and so he started making more and more opportunities. And then when an opportunity came for a management position, he promoted me into that. And then he promoted me into another one, then he promoted me into another one, and every time he did that, God blessed me to excel at the work. And then the second gentleman did pretty much the same thing. So yes, you're gonna have people along the way who are gonna help you. And when they do that, and as you get an opportunity, you help someone else. Make sure you do that. Don't ever forget that. Always help somebody else. Thank you.
Amen. We pray you are blessed by the worship experience here at Truth Revealed. Share this word with your friends and loved ones on your news feed and timeline. And remember, there are several ways to partner with us. Text Trim Give to 888-364-4483. Follow the prompts and you will receive a confirmation text of your gift. You can also give online at truthrevealed.org or securely donate using the Truth Revealed mobile app. You can also mail in your gift addressed to Truth Revealed at 1550 Orange Blossom Trail Northeast, Palm Bay, Florida 32905. Once again, we thank you for your continued generosity to Truth Revealed. And to those who have answered the call to salvation, please email connect@truthrevealed.org. And until the next time, remember to share this message and stay connected via Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Trim Nation 1. May God bless you and keep you until our next gathering.